There are moments in life when success feels like a punishment. Moments when everything you thought you wanted stands glittering before you: money, power, admiration, and yet you feel completely empty. That was the kind of night Steven Melton was having. He stood before the wide glass window of his penthouse, the city of New York glittering below like a field of stars. His reflection stared back at him in the dark glass, a man in an expensive black suit, groomed to perfection, the image of control and power. But behind the calm expression in his blue eyes, there was unrest, an ache that no amount of wealth could quiet. On the polished desk behind him lay the divorce papers. His signature was still wet, the ink gleaming faintly under the golden lamplight. That single stroke of his pen had ended 5 years of marriage. 5 years of love, of laughter, of small fights and big dreams. 5 years with Zara. He told himself this was for the best. That they had outgrown each other. That she deserved more than a man consumed by his company, by his ambition, by his never-ending chase for perfection. But now, as silence filled the vast apartment, he realized he hadn't set her free. He had only set himself adrift. His phone vibrated. A message from his friend, Thomas. No words, just a photo. Steven opened it carelessly and froze. It was Zara. She was sitting at a restaurant table, her hand resting gently on someone else's. A man. Black-haired, warm-eyed, laughing with her in a way Steven hadn't seen in years. She looked radiant, alive. The soft light of the restaurant danced on her skin, her smile effortless and free. And for the first time since signing those papers, Steven felt something he couldn't name. It wasn't anger. It wasn't jealousy. It was heartbreak disguised as realization. He zoomed in on the image, tracing the outline of her face with his thumb. The man sitting across from her leaned close, listening intently. His hand covered hers, and she didn't pull away. "Who is he?" Steven texted back. The reply came fast. "A doctor. Works at her hospital. They've been spending time together." Steven's jaw tightened. He poured himself a drink, then another. The liquor burned down his throat but couldn't numb the ache spreading in his chest. By midnight, the bottle was empty, and he was still staring at that picture. He had wanted freedom, but now it tasted like regret. He'd convinced himself that Zara had become distant, that she was the one pulling away. But maybe it had been him. The late nights, the cancelled dinners, the promises he never kept. She had waited until she couldn't anymore. Outside, the city pulsed with life. Cars moved like veins of light through the streets below. Somewhere in that vast sea of people, Zara was laughing with someone else, and the world hadn't stopped turning. He picked up his phone again, her number glowing on the screen. His thumb hovered over the call button. What would he even say? "I made a mistake? I miss you? I can't stand seeing you with someone else?" Pride won. It always did. He dropped the phone onto the desk and leaned his forehead against the cold glass. He had built empires, won wars in boardrooms, and turned rivals into ghosts. But he couldn't win this. Not against his own heart. The night stretched endlessly. When dawn finally broke, Steven hadn't slept. The sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting the room gold. In the harsh clarity of morning, he made a decision. He would win her back. He didn't know how. He didn't know if it was possible. But he knew he couldn't let her go, not yet, not like this. He called his lawyer as soon as the office opened. "Stop the filing," he said. But the answer hit him like a door slamming shut. "It's too late, Mr. Melton. The papers have already been processed. Unless Mrs. Melton agrees to withdraw, the divorce will proceed." Steven's hand clenched around the phone. "Then I'll make her agree." He had built an empire from nothing. Surely, he could rebuild a marriage. But he had yet to learn that hearts don't operate on contracts and negotiations. Later that day, he stood in the bedroom they had once shared. The walk-in closet where her clothes used to hang was empty now. The vanity where her perfume stood, her laughter once echoing through the space, was bare. Every trace of her was gone, except the memories. He opened a drawer and found a photograph, Zara on their wedding day. Her white dress glowing against her dark skin, her eyes filled with hope. He looked younger in that picture too, unguarded, unafraid, in love. He didn't recognize that man anymore. Success had taken him, reshaped him, hardened him. And in the process, he had lost the very thing that made his life worth living. He slipped the photo into his jacket pocket. He didn't know what his next move would be, only that he had to see her. 2 weeks passed before he gathered the courage. He sat in his car outside the hospital where she worked, watching the sliding doors open and close, nurses rushing in and out. He had rehearsed 100 speeches in his head, but when he finally walked inside, all he felt was a tremor in his chest. The receptionist recognized him immediately. "Mr. Melton. Are you here to see Dr. Zara?" Her name still sounded foreign next to his. "She's in surgery," the woman said, "but she should be finished soon. You can wait in her office if you'd like." Steven nodded. Zara's office hadn't changed. Diplomas lined the wall, small potted plants by the window, photos of her with smiling children, patients she had healed. On her desk was a framed picture of the two of them in Bali, arms around each other, sunlight spilling over their faces. Had they been happy then? Or was that happiness already slipping through their fingers? The door opened. She froze when she saw him. "Steven," she said softly, surprise flickering in her eyes before she gathered herself. "What are you doing here?" He placed the photo back on the desk. "I wanted to see you." "The papers are filed," she said. "There's nothing left to discuss." "I made a mistake, Zara." His voice broke on her name. "I want to try again." "You don't get to call me that anymore," she replied. "And you don't get to change your mind because you're lonely." He hesitated. "I saw you with someone." Her eyes hardened. "You were spying on me." "It wasn't like that. Thomas sent me a photo." "Then you've already seen what you needed to see." "Who is he?" "Someone who listens," she said quietly. "Someone who sees me." He swallowed hard. "Please, have dinner with me. Just one night." "Let me explain." She stared at him for a long moment. Finally, she sighed. "One dinner. But don't expect anything to change." Relief flooded his chest. "Thank you. I'll pick you up at 8. "I'll meet you there," she said, walking past him. "Text me the address." At the door, he called out softly, "Zara, I'm sorry." She paused but didn't turn around. "Sorry doesn't fix what's broken, Steven." That evening, he arrived at the restaurant an hour early. He chose a corner table by the window, ordered her favorite wine, and sat waiting, heart pounding like a drum. When she finally arrived, everything else faded. She wore a simple black dress that hugged her figure, her curls framing her face. For a moment, he could only stare. "You look beautiful," he said. "Thank you," she replied, her tone polite but distant. "Why am I here, Steven?" He took a breath. "Because I was wrong. I thought I wanted freedom. But freedom without you feels like exile. I miss you." She studied him, her eyes unreadable. "You miss the idea of me. You miss having someone waiting at home. But you stopped seeing me long ago." "That's not true," he began, but the words felt hollow. "Do you remember my birthday last year?" she asked quietly. "You promised you'd be there. I waited until midnight before blowing out my candle alone." He had no defense. "I can change," he said finally. "Please, give me a chance." "People don't change overnight, Steven." "Then let me prove it over time." She looked away, her expression softening slightly. "The man you saw me with, his name is David. He's a colleague, a friend. Nothing more." Hope sparked in Steven's chest. "So, you're not—" "I didn't say that," she interrupted. "I'm learning who I am without you. I'm rediscovering myself. Could I be part of that journey again?" She placed her napkin on the table. "I don't know. You hurt me deeply. You pushed me away when I needed you most." "I was blind," Steven admitted. "I see that now. I let pride take the place of love." "You're only seeing clearly now because you lost control," she said softly. "Because you saw me move on." "Maybe," he said honestly. "But the pain of losing you woke me up." He reached across the table and took her hand. To his surprise, she didn't pull away. "I love you, Zara. I never stopped. I just forgot how to show it." Her eyes glistened. "I loved you too, Steven. So much. But love isn't always enough." They sat in silence, the city glowing beyond the glass. As dinner ended, he asked, "Can I see you again?" "I'm hosting a hospital fundraiser next weekend," she said finally. "You can come. As a donor, not as my date." "I'll be there." When she left, he watched her go, his heart torn between hope and despair. He had opened a door tonight, a small one, but it was enough to let light in. If you've ever loved someone you lost, but still hoped for one more chance, tell us where you're watching from in the comments below. And if you believe in second chances, make sure you're subscribed, because this story is just getting started. He didn't know that the man she called a friend would soon become the mirror reflecting everything he'd failed to be. And that the road to winning her back would force him to face not just his mistakes, but the truth about why he made them. As the city lights flickered outside his window that night, Steven whispered to himself, "She's worth every fight." But love, he would soon learn, demands more than regret. It demands humility, patience, and a kind of courage that money can't buy. And for the first time in his life, the billionaire who once had everything was about to learn what it truly meant to have nothing, except the woman whose love he had to earn all over again. The week leading up to the hospital fundraiser felt longer than any week in Steven's life. Every morning, he woke before sunrise, restless and haunted by the image of Zara laughing in someone else's company. But now, that haunting had turned into purpose. He poured himself into understanding her world, the one he had once ignored. He researched pediatric medicine, learning about the heart surgeries and cancer wards she'd often spoken of. He even arranged a $1 million donation in her name, though he made sure the credit went to the hospital, not to him. He wanted to show her that this time, it wasn't about power or image, it was about her. The night of the fundraiser finally arrived. The city glowed under a soft drizzle, the streets alive with light. Steven arrived early, his tuxedo pressed, his heart thudding like it hadn't in years. The ballroom was magnificent, chandeliers glittering, tables draped in gold and ivory. Waiters floated between guests with trays of champagne. And then he saw her. Zara entered the room wearing a deep blue gown that caught the light like liquid sapphire. Every head turned. She had always been beautiful, but tonight, there was something different, a quiet confidence, an unshakable peace. Beside her was a man, tall, kind-eyed, and unmistakably familiar from that restaurant photo. Dr. David Washington. Steven's chest tightened as he watched them greet colleagues, their laughter blending seamlessly. It was an easy connection, the kind that used to belong to him. He hesitated only a moment before walking across the ballroom. "Zara," he said softly. She turned, surprise flickering in her eyes. "Steven! You came. I wouldn't miss it. You look," he caught his breath. "Incredible." "Thank you," she replied, measured but kind. "Steven, this is Dr. David Washington, head of cardiology." David extended his hand with a polite smile. "Pleasure to meet you, Mr. Melton." Steven took it, perhaps squeezing just a little too hard. "The pleasure's mine." "I've heard a lot about you," David added. "Funny," Steven said, forcing a small smile. "I can't say the same." Zara shot him a warning look. "David's been instrumental in launching our new children's heart program, the one your donation helped fund." Steven nodded, his voice tight. "Then I'm happy to know the project's in good hands." David's smile didn't waver. "Zara's leadership makes everything easier. She's extraordinary." "I know," Steven said quietly. An awkward silence fell, broken only when Zara excused herself to greet another guest. As she walked away, the two men stood in uneasy quiet, one bound by history, the other by possibility. Steven spoke first. "You care about her?" David met his gaze calmly. "Of course I do. Everyone who works with her does." "That's not what I meant." For a moment, David said nothing. Then, with quiet conviction, he replied, "She deserves someone who sees her. Not just someone who misses her once she's gone." The words hit Steven harder than he expected. Before he could respond, Zara returned, her composure effortlessly restoring peace between them. The evening unfolded like a dream Steven couldn't quite wake from. He watched Zara glide through the crowd, confident, intelligent, compassionate, the woman he had once held, now unreachable. When it was her turn to speak, the room fell silent. Her voice was calm, sincere, radiant with purpose. "We work every day to mend little hearts," she said, "but tonight, I'm reminded that healing begins with love, love for people we may never meet, love for hope itself." The applause was thunderous. Steven's chest ached with pride, mixed with sorrow. She had grown beyond him, into someone greater, stronger, whole. When the speeches ended, he found her at the bar. "Your speech was beautiful," he said. "Thank you. You're changing lives, Zara. I wish I had supported you more when we were together." She looked at him, something soft in her eyes. "Why are you really here, Steven?" "To see you," he said. "To show you that I've changed." People say that when they lose something they never valued enough in the first place. "I know," he admitted. "But I've been empty without you. I used to think power was everything. Now I know the real power was you." She studied him for a long time. "I appreciate your honesty. And your donation. It means a lot to the hospital." He dared to ask, "Not to you?" "Money was never what I wanted from you, Steven," she said quietly. "I wanted your time. Your attention. Your heart." Before he could reply, David appeared beside her, resting a hand on her shoulder. "Ready to go? The board's waiting for us." "Of course," she said, turning back to Steven. "Thank you for coming tonight." "You're leaving with him?" The words escaped before he could stop them. Zara's eyes narrowed. "We're meeting the hospital board for dinner. It's work." He nodded slowly. "Of course. Work. You've always been dedicated." Her expression softened. "Good night, Steven." As he watched them walk away together, a hollow ache bloomed in his chest. But somewhere inside that ache was resolve. He whispered to himself, "Not this time. I won't lose her again." The next morning, he called Zara's sister, Emma. She had always been honest, brutally so. If anyone could tell him the truth about Zara, it was her. "I'm surprised you're calling me," Emma said. "Last I heard, you were too busy for family." "I was too busy for everything," Steven replied. "I made a mistake. I want to make it right." Emma's tone softened. "You hurt her, Steven." "Deeply." "I know," he said. "Tell me how to fix it." She hesitated. "There are things you don't understand. Zara never told you." "Then help me understand." Emma sighed. "Meet me at the coffee shop tomorrow. There's something you should know." The next morning, Steven arrived early. He sat by the window, watching the city move around him, the same city that once made him feel invincible. Now, it only reminded him of what he had lost. Emma arrived, her expression guarded. "You look terrible," she said, sitting across from him. "I haven't slept much," he admitted. "Regrets will do that." He tried to smile. "I miss her, Emma. I'd give anything to go back." "Then tell me," she said, leaning forward. "Why did you ask for the divorce?" He stared into his coffee. "I thought we were growing apart. We barely saw each other. Every time we spoke, we fought. I convinced myself she'd be happier without me." Emma watched him carefully. "And you think she is?" "No," he said quietly. "I think she's surviving." Emma took a deep breath. 6 months ago, Zara found a lump in her breast. The world tilted. "What?" "She didn't tell you." "She wanted to, but the night she got the results, you canceled dinner for a business meeting. She waited up for you until midnight. You never came." He remembered that night. The unopened champagne. The untouched dinner. The way she'd been so quiet the next morning. "She went through the tests alone," Emma continued. "The fear, the waiting, the night she thought she might die. And you didn't even notice." Steven's throat tightened. "Is she?" It was benign, Emma said quickly. But she didn't know that for weeks. And by the time she got the all clear, she had already made up her mind. She was done waiting for you to see her. Steven sat frozen, shame flooding every corner of his heart. She found comfort in her work, Emma said softly. And in people who were there for her, like David. He was her doctor. He saw her strength when you didn't. He buried his face in his hands. I didn't know. God, I didn't know. That's the problem, Emma said quietly. You stopped seeing her long before the divorce. You saw your success. Your reflection. Your image. But not her. Tears burned his eyes. She deserves better. Maybe. But she also deserves to know you finally understand what you lost. He looked up. How do I even begin to make this right? Start by showing her that you see her now, Emma said. All of her, not just the parts that made your world look perfect. That evening, Steven stood outside Zara's apartment building, a bouquet of sunflowers in his hand. Roses felt wrong, she had always said they were too predictable. Sunflowers were her favorite, strong, bright, alive. When she opened the door, she looked surprised but calm. Steven, what are you doing here? I needed to see you, he said, holding out the flowers. I remember you love these. Her expression softened for a moment. You remembered. I remember everything about you, Zara. I just forgot to show it. She hesitated, then stepped aside. Come in. Her apartment was smaller than their old home, cozy and filled with color, books, plants, little pieces of life. It felt more her than the mansion ever had. He smiled faintly. It's beautiful. Like you built a whole new world. I did, she said. One that doesn't depend on anyone else. He nodded slowly. I came to tell you something. I know I failed you. I put everything else before you, my work, my ego, my pride. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know I see it now. Her eyes searched his. What changed? I realized that all the things I chase mean nothing if I come home to an empty life. I thought success made me powerful. But real power was learning to love you right, and I didn't. She exhaled, the tension in her shoulders softening. That's the first honest thing you've said in a long time. I'm trying to be better, he said quietly. Not for you, for the man I should have been all along. Zara looked at the flowers, then back at him. I had a health scare last year, she said suddenly, her voice trembling. A lump. It turned out to be benign, but for weeks, I thought I might die. Steven's eyes filled with tears. Why didn't you tell me? You weren't there, she whispered. You were always somewhere else, on a flight, in a meeting, in your own world. He reached for her hand, his voice breaking. I'm so sorry. I should have been there. I should have known. David was, she said simply. He held my hand through every test, every waiting room, every night I couldn't sleep. Steven swallowed hard, fighting the surge of jealousy. I'm grateful he was. I wish it had been me. Zara looked up, startled. You're not angry. I'm angry at myself, he said. Not him. Something shifted in her gaze, a glimmer of recognition, of softness. You really have changed, haven't you? I'm trying to, he said. I can't rewrite the past. But I can build a future that honors what I should have done. I don't know if I can trust you again, she admitted. Then let me earn it. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, with a small smile, she said, "There's a charity gala next month. You could come, as my friend." His heart soared. I'd love that. As he left her apartment that night, the city lights felt different. Not as cruel, not as cold. There was warmth in the air, like the promise of spring after a long winter. He didn't know it yet, but this was only the beginning. Because when a heart learns how to break, it also learns how to heal, but never without a cost. If you're still watching right now, tell me in the comments, have you ever tried to win back someone you loved after realizing it too late? The days that followed felt lighter for Steven, not because the pain was gone, but because purpose had returned. For the first time in years, he wasn't waking up to chase numbers, meetings, or deals. He was waking up to chase something purer, redemption. He began to change, quietly. His employees noticed it first. The man who once barked orders now listened. The one who used to leave meetings halfway through to take calls stayed till the end. He had stopped treating people like assets and started seeing them as souls, fragile, beautiful, flawed, like him. He visited the hospital more often, volunteering anonymously. Sometimes he read to sick children in the recovery ward. Other times he brought coffee to exhausted nurses. He didn't do it for Zara's attention, he did it because he wanted to understand her world, the one filled not with profit, but with compassion. Zara saw him there one morning, sitting by a little boy's bed, helping him assemble a Lego set. She stood quietly in the doorway for a while, watching the way Steven smiled, gentle, unguarded, human. When he noticed her, his expression softened. He said he wants to be a pilot, Steven said with a small laugh. I told him the sky's big enough for both of us. She smiled faintly. You've been coming here a lot. I wanted to help, he said simply. To give back. You always said love is service. I'm finally learning what that means. Her eyes lingered on him, not the billionaire she once married, but the man she had always prayed he'd become. That evening, she called her sister. Emma, he's different, she said softly. I don't know how, but he is. Then maybe give him space to show you, Emma replied. Not everyone who breaks your heart is meant to stay broken. The following week, Zara hosted a small charity gala, elegant but intimate. Steven arrived quietly, no grand entrances, no lavish donations. He simply took his seat and listened as doctors and families shared stories of healing and hope. When Zara took the stage, he couldn't take his eyes off her. She spoke about forgiveness, about the strength it takes to rebuild trust, and how sometimes love isn't lost, it's waiting to be reborn. After the event, she found him outside, standing under the soft glow of city lights. You were quiet tonight, she said. I didn't want to take the spotlight, he smiled. You shine bright enough for both of us. Zara laughed, really laughed, the way she used to. You're still a charmer. Maybe, he said. But this time, I mean every word. A comfortable silence settled between them. Then she asked softly, why now, Steven? Why fight for me after all this time? He looked at her, his eyes glistening. Because I finally understand what love is. It's not possession. It's not pride. It's presence. And I'd give everything I have just to be present with you again, even if it means starting as your friend. Zara's expression softened. That's all I ever wanted. For you to be here. Weeks passed, and friendship blossomed, cautiously, beautifully. They went on morning walks, shared coffee after her shifts, and sometimes, when the moment felt right, laughed about the past. But it wasn't easy. There were days when old wounds reopened. Days when Zara would look at him and remember the loneliness he caused. And days when Steven would look at her and see the distance still between them. One evening, as they walked along the Hudson River, she asked, "Steven, do you ever wonder what would have happened if we never divorced?" He smiled sadly. "We'd still be together, but I don't think we'd be happy. I had to lose you to learn how to love you right." She stopped walking, her heart heavy yet hopeful. "And now that you've learned?" He looked at her, really looked. "Now I'll spend every day proving it." They stood in silence, the city lights reflecting off the water, the wind brushing softly between them. For the first time, the space between them felt sacred, not broken. But love's greatest test always arrives when least expected. One night, Zara collapsed at work. Exhaustion, dehydration, and emotional strain all caught up to her. When Steven got the call, he broke every traffic law racing to the hospital. He found her in a hospital bed, pale but breathing steadily. David stood at her side, checking her vitals. "She's stable," David said quietly. "But she needs rest. And less stress." Steven nodded, guilt tightening his chest. "Thank you for taking care of her." David sighed. "She's been pushing herself too hard. Between work, the charity, and EU." Steven looked up sharply. "Me?" David met his eyes. "She's trying to decide if she can let you back in. That kind of decision can break a person if they're not ready." "I never wanted to hurt her again," Steven said softly. "I believe you," David replied. "But love isn't about proving intentions. It's about consistency." Steven swallowed hard. "You love her, don't you?" David smiled faintly. "Maybe I do. But I also know when someone's heart belongs elsewhere. She may not trust you yet, but she still feels you." He walked away, leaving Steven alone by Zara's bedside. For hours, Steven sat silently, watching her sleep. He thought about every mistake, every missed birthday, every night she cried alone. Then he reached for her hand and whispered, "I'll never walk away again." When Zara woke, morning sunlight filled the room. She blinked, her eyes meeting his. "You stayed." "I couldn't leave," he said softly. "You scared me." She smiled faintly. "It's just fatigue." "No, Zara," he said. "It's everything. You take care of the whole world and forget to take care of yourself." Her eyes filled with tears. "Sometimes it's easier to heal others than to heal yourself." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Then let me help you heal, too." In that moment, something broke, the wall between them, the silence, the weight of years lost. She reached for his hand and held it. "I don't know where this goes, Steven," she said quietly. "I don't want to rush into old patterns." "I don't either," he said. "Let's build something new." Her lips curved into a soft smile. "Something honest. Something sacred," he whispered. Weeks later, Zara invited him over for dinner. It was simple: pasta, wine, laughter. She looked radiant, lighter, as though she had finally laid her pain to rest. Halfway through dinner, she hesitated. "There's something I need to tell you," she said softly. He set his glass down. "What is it?" She took a deep breath. "The doctors found something again, but it's not what I expected." His heart froze. "What do you mean?" "I'm pregnant," she said, her voice trembling. Steven stared at her, stunned. "Pregnant?" She nodded. "I found out last week." "It's yours." Tears filled his eyes. "Mine?" "Yes. From before the divorce. I didn't think I could have children. But somehow?" He stood and walked to her, kneeling beside her chair. "Zara, this is a miracle." Her eyes glistened. "It's terrifying." "I'll be here for every step," he said firmly. "No meetings, no distractions, just us." "Don't promise what you can't keep," she whispered. He took her hands. "I'm not promising this time. I'm committing." She studied his face, and for the first time, she believed him. The months that followed became their rebirth. They attended doctor visits together, rebuilt small traditions, Sunday breakfasts, evening prayers, slow dances in the kitchen. They still had arguments, still carried scars, but now, every fight ended with forgiveness instead of pride. Steven was no longer the man who wanted control. He had learned to serve. To love quietly, not loudly. To show up. When their daughter was born, Zara held her close, tears streaming down her cheeks. "She's perfect," she whispered. Steven leaned in, his voice breaking. "You both are." They named her Grace because everything they had survived felt like grace itself. Months later, standing by the window with their baby asleep between them, Zara whispered, "I used to pray that you'd come back to me. But now, I realize God didn't bring you back, He made us new." Steven kissed her forehead. "We broke to be rebuilt. And now, I'll spend the rest of my life loving you the way I should have from the start." She smiled through tears. "That's all I ever wanted." The camera would linger here, on their silhouettes framed against the city lights, not perfect, but peaceful. Because love stories don't always end where they began. Sometimes, they begin again, wiser, humbler, and finally free. If you believe love deserves a second chance, let me know in the comments below. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe and share it with someone who still believes in forgiveness. Because sometimes, the greatest love stories aren't about falling in love. They're about learning how to stay.